talking about Doris Miller today. We're going to talk about Doris Miller and him being, a young man who, as I mentioned, only lived for a short period of time. He only lived for 24 years. He had a short life, but he had a big heart, and he was a big man who did a lot of things with his life. Sometimes your life is not measured, necessarily by how long you live, but it's what you do with your life. Martin Luther King said, I like everyone would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but sometimes you have an opportunity to do things that are different and difficult. And this man did not shy away from challenge. He did not stand down in the face of challenge. So I want to remember him and acknowledge him today as we think about Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. So we'll tell his story and what he did on that day. But first of all, he was born in October 12th, 1919 is when he was born. He was born in Waco, Texas. So he was born in Texas. Imagine it's 1919 and he's growing up in the 1920s during the Great Depression, and that being a difficult time for many families, almost every family, if you will, having some type of challenge, and especially many families having very many challenges during the Great Depression in a rural area. Being a black person in a rural area in Texas had to be difficult for him. As he got older, he ended up joining the Navy. He joined the military, and as World War II broke out, he was a serviceman. He was someone who was volunteering to serve his country, to do a lot of things, that maybe other people may not want to do. When you think about going to war and what you might do when you're actually in a situation, and he was somebody who was tested in that way. So it's 1939. He enlisted in the Navy, and there aren't very many opportunities that the U.S. Navy, the United States military, will allow black people to do, African American men to do, women for that matter as well, but African Americans to do. So he pretty much was a mess, and he was pretty much an attendant in the kitchen and a cook, and did laundry and did many important things to keep the ships and the places where he was assigned functioning and running and clean and that type of thing. So he didn't have an opportunity to be trained like some other people were trained, because he just was not given an opportunity being a black man. So, when we tell his story, we have to know that, he's there in the mess hall for a reason, because that's one of the few opportunities he had in service to his country while he was in the Navy at that time. But he's in the Navy, as I mentioned, it's the 1940s now, and it's early 1940s. And he ends up being put on the ship, the USS West Virginia, and they are sent to Pearl Harbor, and they're there in Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And he is there, attending to his duties in the harbor aboard the ship, and he gets the call that probably nobody wants to get when war is breaking out and you have to address, it's fighting, it's now. There's no second chance, there's no turning back, there's no thinking about it, no second thoughts. You have to respond in the heat of battle, and they're under attack. The Japanese are attacking. They're under attack. And in that situation, everybody has a role to play. You're on a warship. Everybody has a role to play. And so he had to go man his battle station. And he left from what he was doing. I believe he was doing laundry. He went to go man his battle station. But when he get to the area where he was supposed to go, the area was essentially blown up. There was really nothing he could do because the area had already been attacked, and it had already taken a lot of damage. I think his job was going to be to pass ammunition, hand ammunition to an officer so they could begin shooting and to defend themselves. But there was nothing he could do in his battle station because it was blown to smithereens. It was pretty much destroyed. The ship had been hit. The ship was sinking. The ship was going to sink. It was going to basically go down to the bottom of the harbor, and he decided to stay on the ship. He's sitting there and he's helping, and he goes and interacts with other officers and ends up going to the bridge apparently to help save the captain. The captain had been mortally wounded. The captain had shrapnel all in his belly, and he was bleeding from his abdomen, and he was direly wounded. And Dory Miller helped to get him off the ship, helped to get him to safety. And doing that, that could have been enough. Some people would have stopped after getting the captain or helping the captain to safety, but he did not stop there. He ended up going to a place where they also had these 50 caliber guns, and they were firing anti-aircraft guns, and he was providing ammunition to the person firing. And he saw one of the guns that was unmanned, and obviously they needed help. And he went over, he took over that gun and began firing it until it was out of ammunition. Apparently he took down a couple planes, maybe one or two or more planes apparently from his firing. And he had never been trained on it. Remember, there were only so many things that they would allow black people to do, African American men to do in the Navy, and a mess hand was one of them. Operating this 50 caliber anti-aircraft gun was not one of them, but he did it. And so as I mentioned, he fired this, apparently took down a couple planes, fired it till it was out of ammunition, and then went to go get other people, other crew members, other of his brothers, if you will, crew members, to help get them to safety and to get them to shore before he made it to shore. And this is while the boat is badly sinking, while it's gonna sink and basically go to the bottom of the harbor. He's saving lives. And on that day, over 2,400 and some odd people died. Americans died in that attack, and at least 19 ships were either sunk or badly destroyed, badly damaged in Pearl Harbor. So he was one of the men who risked his life, who did not just jump ship, if you will. He literally went in and helped people and saved lives on that day and saved people from dying. Apparently when it was over, his heroics and the things that he did were talked about, but initially they were talked about in an unnamed way. They didn't name who he was. It was kind of like an unnamed black man, like a generic, black man did this, not really giving him credit initially by name for what he did. And apparently the NAACP and various African-American citizens put pressure on the government, pressure in public saying, acknowledge this man. It's not just some unnamed person. We're not going to just brush over what he did. He saved people's lives, and he should be recognized like anybody who would do that, who did that. So he was eventually recognized. He was given the Navy Cross. He got other medals and honors with respect to what he did that day in saving people's lives. And we should all respect that because, he's a man at this time. He's in his 20s. He's in his early 20s. Like I mentioned, he only lives to be 24 years old, and he's battle tested, and he rises to the occasion to help save people when he could have done something else. So honor to him and kind of remembering him and kind of glory to him, if you will, for doing that in his life. He ends up later on being assigned to the Liscum Bay, another battleship later on in 1943. And he ends up being in the Pacific in another firefight, a battle, if you will, in a submarine, a torpedo from a submarine hit the ship that he was on. Some 900 people, I believe, were on that ship. Some 600 of them died. And they believe that he was one of the ones who died as in that massive attack that took place on the Liscum Bay and the ship that he was on in the Pacific. So he was actually, he lived just beyond his 24th birthday. He lived to be 24 years old, and his parents found out about his death actually 2 years to the day of Pearl Harbor. So it was just an amazing thing. But when I think about him, I don't want to think about his death and his ending, but just what kind of man he was, what he did with his life in a short period of time in the 24 years that he had. So I want to remember him today. Thank you so much for listening. Please share this with somebody, share this story with somebody. Please subscribe if you get a chance. And thank you so much for listening. God bless you.